Welcome everyone to today's reading by the LaborFest writers. My name is Nellie Wong, and I've been a member of the LaborFest writers since 2008, but some of our members joined way before that. We also have an anthology that we published way back in 2018 of our writings from 2005 to 2017. And if you are interested in getting a copy, if you haven't had a copy, you must buy one. That's the way it is. And it's a great opportunity for us as worker writers, as activists, as anti-capitalists and Marxists and feminists and such. Worker writers, I think, that is the most important thing that we can be identified as. And I'm just really thrilled to be a part of the reading and to say hello to everyone and appreciate your taking time this afternoon to join us for a couple of hours. Our history is actually well spelled out in the Giving Voice anthology. And if you're interested in a copy, you can put your name and address and phone number in the chat. I will see that you get a copy. And I think the other thing I can say is that it's just really essential that we continue our work as worker writers and to give voice to the working class, given the politics of today and actually yesterday, and what we can fight for, and to change the kind of society that we really want, that will be for the benefit of the working class and the labor power that we give and we're not paid for, or we're not given rest periods or health benefits and all those issues that affect working people's lives. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our, this is the order, I'll just say them and who our writers are. Active writers are right now are Keith Cooley, Margaret Cooley, Susan Ford, Jerry Path, Alice Rogoff, Robert Eugene Rubino, and myself. Thank you. And our first reader will be Keith.
Hi, everyone. Scene 1. My name is Judith Macaulay. She was a young woman dressed in t-shirt and jeans, long brown hair parted in the middle, and a look of uncertainty in her eyes. Sometimes I think, what was the point of all this education? Where did it get me? My parents were unwilling to pay for my college. They said, don't go away to school, but I went anyway. They were stuck in a little town in Pennsylvania, but there was no future there for me. There was not even a Starbucks in town. It was Grandpa, Papa Joe. He had been a miner, one of the last generations of coal miners in Pennsylvania. He had said to me, I'm a goddamn socialist and a union member forever. I told him that's what I want to be. He'd always been solid with the union in the fight for better conditions down the mine. I was the only one in my family interested in what Papa Joe had done, and then he was gone. After college, I went to live in Philadelphia. I ended up $60,000 in debt and a Master of Arts, but with no idea how to get a job. Eventually, I got a job as a barista at Starbucks. It was really fun working with the people the same age as me. Then I got transferred to a busy store on a major highway. Working conditions were not good. I started talking with my co-workers about unions. Scene 2. Man with a white hair in his late 70s talking to a young man and a young woman in a coffee shop in Ithaca, New York. The old man with white hair said, let me ask you, how much do you get paid? The young man replied, I get paid $15.50 an hour. And the young woman said, 15. The old man said, you get paid horrendously low wages. Basically, it's minimum wage. Yes, they agreed. The old man asked, can you afford the health care they provide? They both shook their heads. The old man said, it's about part of the bullshit corporations often do. They say, look at us, we're being generous. We have this, we have that. But the problem is you can't afford their health care. It's the same with the other corporations like Amazon or Walmart. The young woman spoke out. It's never certain how many hours I'm going to be able to work in the next couple of weeks. They control that. Often I work less hours than I want, which limits my income. They don't want us to stay. They want us to leave after a year or two. And you have to work at least 20 hours a week to get any benefits. The old man said, real power in this country lies with the very wealthy people who own the economy and want to hold it all. The thing that they are most afraid of is when you guys say, wait a minute, let's see, the company has a 31% increase in profits. 60 million went to the former CEO who gets $1 billion richer, and I'm making $15 an hour. It does not make sense. It's not right or fair. Scene 3. A man strides confidently up to the podium, dressed impeccably in a tailored green suit and blue tie, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed. From the stage, he looks down with his steely eyes at the room with rows of seats with young people. He said, I'm coming out of retirement to lead this company again. No longer can we ignore the many ways we have been violently assaulted by the threats of unionization in our stores. We're going to face it head on, and there are going to be consequences. He paused for 10 seconds and looked around. You are called partners, and to be partners, certain things are demanded of you. He glanced down at the audience of young people, a slight smile on his lips. He said, let me be clear. We're investing only in non-union stores. Going forward, we will provide raises and benefits only to partners working in non-union stores. Get the message? In a cramped break room in a coffee shop in Knoxville, a group of young baristas huddled around a phone listening, their expressions falling as they heard the announcement. A Black barista named Jamal shook his head in disbelief. He can't do that. It's totally illegal. His co-worker, Elsie, a Latino woman still dressed in a green apron after her shift, replied angrily, it's retaliation, plain and simple, just because we unionized. Jamal sighed, running a hand over his short-cropped hair. We work just as hard as anyone else, but with rent and student loans, a few dollars raised would really help me out. This isn't right. Elsa nodded wearily. I know. My abuelita worked in a factory and told me how important her union was. She'd be outraged if she saw them punishing us like this. Scene 4. A professor of labor studies is being interviewed by a magazine reporter. The reporter asks the professor, how did the unionization happen at Starbucks? The professor said, despite Starbucks' attempts to thwart the election, workers voted for the union in 2 of the 3 Buffalo stores on December the 9th, 2021. This was the beginning. On March 22nd, 2022, there was the first election victory in Starbucks' hometown, Seattle. The vote count was 9-0. And the fact that it was unanimous in a store so close to the corporate headquarters made it even sweeter for those workers. Today, 330 stores have voted to unionize. This is less than 3% of the stores in the US, and only 55 stores have union contracts. This has disturbed Howard Schwartz, the founder and former CEO, who came out of retirement to direct the strategy at Starbucks. Most recently, he made it clear that wages would be raised at all stores except those that have been unionized, thereby punishing the workers who have unionized. Starbucks often disputes union elections. It refuses to meet with union bargainers or cancels at the last moment. Union stores have been closed. Workers involved in the union have been fired for minor infractions. It is apparent Starbucks has adopted a deliberate plan of delay and avoidance to thwart unionization. The professor said to the reporter, "I think these actions by Schwartz are illegal. It certainly shows how worried the executives are about them. Their passive-aggressive tactics of delay and avoidance are quiet and undramatic, especially compared with the brutal strikes and brawls on the picket lines of labor struggles in the past. However, these tactics are quite effective at dispelling the hope that unionization creates among workers. It encourages them to leave when there are no signs of visible progress." Scene 5. The man in the tailored gray suit sat at a table in a congressional hearing room. The white-haired man in his late 70s addressed him from a raised dais, wagging his finger while he spoke. "Mr. Schwartz, I have to say I'm deeply disturbed by Starbucks' shameful union-busting tactics. Your workers have every right to organize and demand better conditions." Senator Sanders slammed his hand on the desk for emphasis. Schwartz shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Senator Sanders continued, "Starbucks claims to be a progressive company, yet you punish your own workers for legal union activities. You cut wages and benefits for union stores. You fire pro-union employees on trumped-up charges. This is disgraceful." Mr. Schwartz said, "Senator Sanders, I assure you, we respect our partners' legal rights." Senator Sanders interrupted, "With respect, your actions speak louder than your words, Mr. Schwartz. Your anti-union efforts reveal the truth. I will do everything in my power to support your workers in the fight for fair treatment, and I urge you to drop this anti-union crusade immediately." Another senator spoke up, "Sir, do you realize you are squeezing the people who made you rich, who made you a billionaire?" Schwartz's jaw tightened as he glared at the senators. Murmurs rose from the spectators' gallery. "Yes, I have billions of dollars. I started with nothing. I earned it. No one gave it to me. Anyone who keeps labeling me with this billionaire thing, it's your moniker and it's unfair." Senator Sanders said, "The American people are watching, Mr. Schwartz. It's time to start treating your workers with dignity and respect." Scene 6. The National Labor Relations Board judge, an older white man with a gray-haired mustache and a black robe, sat at a large wooden desk. He stared down at the paperwork through his glasses as he read this statement. "After reviewing the evidence, we find multiple instances that the Starbucks Corporation is guilty of unfair labor practices, including retaliation against workers for union activities. This type of conduct is illegal and violates workers' rights. There are clear grounds to pursue litigation against Starbucks." In the break room of the Knoxville coffee shop, The baristas broke into cheers and tears of happiness when they heard the news from the Labour Board. Jamal pumped his fist in the air. We did it. I can't believe it. Elsa and her co-worker Diego hugged, both grinning broadly. I knew we were right, Diego said. Take that, Starbucks. You can't get away with mistreating your workers. Elsa wiped a tear from her eye, smiling but serious. This is just one step. We'll celebrate today, but there's still so much to fight for. Better wages, consistent hours. The battle goes on. Jamal nodded, his expression equally serious. You're so right, but this means we have a real shot at making positive change. If we organize together, I believe we can build a better future. Scene 7. Judith Macaulay stood against the outside grey stucco wall wearing a green apron. She was on her break. She said, I've been very involved in the unionization of this store. Now my hours have been cut to 10 a week. I can't survive on that. They're trying to get me to a point where I just quit. She fidgeted, putting her weight on her right leg. When I'm not sure what to do, I think of Papa Joe and his struggle in the mines. Thank you. This was inspired by the organizing work of Jay Brisack, Michelle Eisen at Buffalo, Maggie, Jamal, and Elsa in Knoxville, and many other workers at Starbucks across the United States living through these precarious times. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, everyone. And let's welcome Margaret Cooley, our next LaborFest writer.
Hello, thanks everybody for being here. I think most of you know, but maybe not everybody, that LaborFest started here in San Francisco, has been held every July. And the reason July is because it commemorates the general strike of 1934. And the general strike began after the events of July 5th, Bloody Thursday, when the police who were on the scene got violent, started clubbing people, shot hundreds of bullets into the crowd, killing 3 and injuring 115 people. And so at that point, a general strike was called. And among those present on the scene is someone that some of us knew, writer Tilly Olson. And at that time in 1934, she was Tilly Lerner, and she was a journalist for the Partisan Review. And she was reporting on the events, and I've read her reports. I highly recommend them. And she really captured and quoted a lot of the voices of the strikers firsthand. And she also wrote down in her reports all their chants. And so the chants that I include are inspired and taken from Tilly's reporting. Men along the shore. We're through sweating blood, loading cargo 5 times the weight we should carry, standing morning after morning screaming, men along the shore, like slaves in a slave market, betting and begging for a bidder. We'll be out, you'll see. We'll be out. And then hell can't stop us. Hell can't stop us. That was the meaning of the lines of women and children marching up Market Street in San Francisco, chanting, hell can't stop us. That was the meaning of seamen, the oilers, the wipers, the mastermates, the pilots, and the scalers. For years, we were nothing to them, only nameless beasts of burden, But now we're solid, even if it means general strike. That was the moment, the first bruise in their hearts of those that thought that they were our masters. Who started the violence? Who ordered the clubbing? Armed forces massacring unarmed? Get out of here. Get out of here. You sons of bitches. It doesn't matter. It doesn't stop us. We will never forget what happened today. Go on. Do what you will. Nothing can stop us now. Thank you. Okay. I have one audience member here. Next, welcome our next LaborFest writer, Jerry Path. Thank you. Welcome, Jerry.
Hi, everyone. Well, the title of my piece is The Minneapolis Community Unions Project, Police Patrol, 1967. I am now an old man. It is a privilege to have the opportunity to look back over the lessons learned, for the future. Today, I want to recall my very first political activity. This was my involvement in the Minneapolis Community Union Project, or MCUP for short. We took our ideology and inspiration from the civil rights struggle in the South. This was reflected in slogans such as, "We have no leaders. Let the people decide. The people together are powerful." And the idea of participatory democracy. We organized around issues such as welfare rights, tenant rights, and police brutality. We had an office on Franklin Avenue, where many Native Americans had taken up residence and experienced police brutality on a daily basis, often being beat up on the street for no reason other than that they should go back home to the reservation where they belonged. To combat this, we in MCUP in the spring of 1967 had a police patrol. This may have been inspired by the Black Panthers, I am not sure. Doug Elliott was our leader. I was a follower. I was new to politics and was in truth just struggling to understand the possibility of participatory democracy, or even just what it was. What the police patrol consisted of basically was that we would follow them in Doug's Jeep as they drove around the neighborhood at night. Two of us would do this using walkie-talkies. We would communicate back to the office our observations of any violations of Indigenous peoples' civil and legal rights. This was also a means of letting them know if we got in trouble, so that if we did, they would call Doug Hall, our lawyer. They could call Doug Hall, our lawyer. But we had a purpose beyond the police patrol, and that was to encourage the Indigenous people to stand up for themselves. To this end, we began going to the Roundup, a local bar where Native Americans congregated. The only person I remember actually talking to was Robert Smith, one of Margaret Smith's 7 sons. Margaret Smith worked with our Welfare Rights Committee and had a wealth of experience, both from the Red Lake Reservation and from her 12 years living in the city. Here is what she wrote in our March 1st, 1967 MCUP news. "I am really concerned about how we poor people are pushed around like old rags sometimes. Before coming to the city, I lived at Red Lake with my 7 sons. We made a living by logging, sewing, and fishing. But when we came to the city 12 years ago, there were no good jobs or for Indians or good housing, end quote. It was mostly Doug who spoke to Margaret's son, Robert, at the roundup, trying to convince him of our ideas of participatory democracy and what Native Americans needed, and that Native Americans needed to get together, that together they could fight back against the police. Around closing time, we left the bar along with a crowd of other patrons. Doug, Robert, and I were standing together when a police patrol wagon cruised slowly by, surveying the crowd for likely targets. Doug, probably just out of impulse, flicked them the bird. I hoped that we were out of sight, but no such luck. The cops backed up and got out and informed Doug that he was under arrest. Robert quickly melted away, but I just stood at Doug's side. The cops said I could go home, but I said no, I was sticking with my friend. So we were both loaded into the paddy wagon. Then, all the while that we were being driven to jail, Doug kept shouting, "We want our Miranda rights. We want our Miranda rights." I had no idea what Miranda rights were, so I kept silent. We were placed in a holding cell separate from any of the other prisoners. Doug kept yelling. Eventually, we both had to pee. We both shouted, "We need to use the bathroom." "Go in your pants," was the response. We waited a bit, and when no one came, we decided to pee not in our pants or in the cell, but between the bars out into the hallway. Just as the puddle had grown large, a cop came trudging around the corner. He almost stepped in it. "Pigs," he said. He was irate and demanded that we mop it up. Doug refused, but I complied. I didn't want things to get any worse, but they almost did, as Doug kept his yelling up. He was told to shut up. When he didn't, a huge cop came into our cell, picked Doug up by his jacket, thrust him against the wall, and was about to beat him when Doug said calmly, "Cool it, man, cool it." And the cop let him go. I was told that Doug's father was a regent at the University of Minnesota. Whether the cop knew of this, I do not know. But the cop did know that beating Doug up might well have repercussions that beating up a Native American wouldn't have. After the cop left our cell, Doug resumed his yelling. I too now wished that he would shut up. I wanted to sleep, and I was afraid. No one knew that we were here. We hadn't been allowed to make any phone calls. I was feeling the reality of our powerlessness. They could just keep us here forever, and no one would know. After a long sleepless night, our cell door opened, and we were ordered to get in line for a court hearing, at which we were released on our own recognizance. Robert Smith, the person we had engaged with at the bar, had not just melted away. He had informed an MCUP organizer, Pat Larson, that we were in jail, and she had contacted Doug Hall, our lawyer, who was instrumental in getting us released and later found not guilty. Robert Smith, his 6 brothers and mother, had been engaged in a struggle against poverty, oppression, and discrimination for many years. In fact, this struggle was their lives. We, as organizers, had much to learn from them. So looking back, I want to bring up an important lesson that we missed. Margaret Smith had brought up a number of times her idea of getting a sewing circle started, like they had on the reservation. The idea didn't get much support. Looking back, I think this was a mistake. While a sewing circle may not have, sewing circle may not have produced much in the way of monetary value, it stood a good chance of building community. Getting together to sew would have given people a chance to talk, to share what was going on in their lives, discussing problems and finding solutions, and doing this, building community. That could better stand together against police abuse and brutality. Last, I would like to say, we can learn lessons from the past. The future is open. It is still to be lived. Thank you.
Great,
And
Jerry.
now Margaret will read a piece by Robert Rubino, LaborFest writer, who couldn't be here today. Margaret?
Thank you. Keith and I are sharing a screen here. Okay. Are we there yet? By Robert Rubino. Are we there yet? My 6-year-old grandson once asked me on my way to the Sonoma coast. We'd barely begun and we were at least an hour away, but he was fidgety and distracted and understandably impatient. And so I lied. I said, no, we're not there yet, but soon, real soon. Real soon. I didn't say it to be mean. I said it to give him a traveling companion other than a grumpy grandpa. Starry-eyed hope. Said it so that it might remove any urge to have us turn back, any notion of the destination not being worth whatever the journey. Soon. Are we there yet? A standard question, annoying and direct and relevant and perhaps thought-provoking too. Are we there yet? We're having a job. Any job means earning a living wage being a far cry from minimum, a living wage meaning having the means to afford to live in the community in which you work. No, not there yet, but soon, right? Real soon? Are we there yet? Hard to say. The signals are mixed, and that might be a wildly optimistic point of view. Last week, Hollywood actors joined the screenwriters in the entertainment industry's first joint strike since 1960, when, irony of ironies, Ronald Reagan was the Actors Guild president, the same Ronald Reagan who, as US president 21 years later, smashed the Air Traffic Controllers Union when it struck for higher pay and working conditions. It could be argued, and quite effectively too, that Reagan's single swift sword not only killed the Air Traffic Controllers Union, but was the beginning of a 40-year weakening of union representation in this country. Are we there yet? No, not there yet, but soon, right? Real soon? That's when this dose of reality in the news the same day last week as the actors and writers strike, Google workers were laid off weeks after forming a union. Like most things in life, and labor justice being no different, it's complicated. The Google workers laid off for forming a union are employed by Accenture, a tech consulting company. However, and we should always pay attention to the howevers, the vast majority of Accenture workers were contracted out to Google, some as long as 8 months ago, writing articles for its help and support pages. As reported by Chase Feliciantonio in the San Antonio Chronicle on Friday, the Accenture workers announced their union drive after they said they were pulled away from their normal Google duties to work on Google Bard. Google Bard, the company's AI-powered conversation program. Are we there yet? No, not there yet, but soon, right? Real soon. Also last week, the Times of London reported that on India's newly launched Odisha TV, a news anchor greeted viewers by saying, Namaste. Well, that's kind of sweet, don't you think? Not exactly. According to the Times of London, after the news jingle, the news presenter appeared on screen dressed in a maroon and gold sari and said, warm greetings to everyone. Namaste. I am Lisa. Lisa, the Times reported, is an AI news anchor who told viewers she represented a historic moment for journalism and asked viewers for their acceptance, love, and enthusiasm too. The Times of London also reported that Jaggi Manat Panda, managing director of the channel, hailed Lisa's arrival as a milestone in broadcasting, TV, and digital journalism. Indeed. Are we there yet? It seemed just minutes before my grandson first asked that question, but that was then and this is now, and it's actually more than a decade later. This time I said, no, we're not there yet. We've really barely begun. And depending on traffic or unforeseen delays or detours or wrong turns, or we might have to change vehicles, I just don't know how long it will take. It might be a while. Longer than you or I would like. The only way we'll never get there is if we stop and turn around. I didn't say those things to be harsh, but to introduce the perfect complementary traveling companion to starry-eyed hope, clear-eyed truth. Thank you. And we will welcome our next LaborFest writer, Nellie Wong. Thank you.
Thank you. This is called You Were Born. You were born, sweet child, from sweat and tears, from blood that flowed through our veins. You came out of disability, out of skin and teeth and bones and rage, at inequities of race, gender, class. You walked out into the sun with the ferociousness of a tiger. Your teeth in Selma, Little Rock, in the third world strikes out of free speech and Blacks who refused to sit any longer at the back of the bus. You came in different sizes and shapes, heights, skin tones. You were hanged, gunned down, chased out of town, murdered, sold, put on the butcher block. But your humanity shone through. The voices of the Fannie Lou Hamers, Robert Williamses, Ella Bakers, and countless unknowns, the browns, yellows, reds, and whites, who fought alongside you, who saw a vision of this life on earth, on the plains, valleys, through rivers and forests and urban sprawls. You were not born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You came encumbered with years of slavery, exploitation in classrooms, offices, locker rooms, construction sites. You will walk upright across this America, this land where opportunities are supposed to be available. You will not die. We won't let you. We with pens in our hands, we with energy in our whole bodies. We who fought for you and with you. No, you will not die. You will live and see that freedom rings, for you are our blood, our passion, affirmative action that flows through the maps of our bodies, of our desire that vibrates for that epitome, that coveted prize, freedom. I'm going to share two more pieces with you. And this piece I wrote for the Remember Rosie Jimenez National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice rally and speak out that was held in San Francisco, October 3rd, 2021, after the decimation of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court. And before I read the piece, I wanted to also share something inspirational by June Jordan, the late Black poet and essayist who died in 2002 from breast cancer. She left a legacy of works to inspire ours and future generations. What is activism? Activism is not specific, issue specific. It's a moral posture that steady state propels you forward from one hard hour to the next, believing that you can do something to make things better. You do something rather than nothing. You assume responsibility for the privilege of your abilities. You do whatever you can. You reach beyond yourself in your imagination and in your wish for understanding and for change. You admit the limitations of individual perspectives. You trust somebody else. You do not turn away. Women of the world. Women who plant rice, women who sew pants, women who weave rugs, women who compose songs, women who launder, who wash and wash, women who clean rooms, who dig ditches, women who agitate for a living wage, women who give their bodies, women who invent, women who dance, women who work, and all women work. Women who sacrifice sleep, women who weld, who paint, who doctor, women who see with their ears, hear with their eyes, women who resist their brains and bodies in united fronts, women who build coalitions, women who organize, strategize, materialize, women who teach, who learn, women who are migrants, refugees, escaping violence against their bodies, their children's lives, women who fight against sexual slavery, women who abort, who choose, women who act for clean water, clear skies, for education for all, women who lead to end wars that promulgate profits, destruction, women who cross borders, women, she, they, we, women of the world unite. We are waves, rivers, mountains. We who cover the earth, fighting to be free. I'll be reading next excerpts from a piece called The 8-Hour Bus Ride of Petronella Esmeralda Kong. Petronella Esmeralda Kong licked her lips. They tasted salty, but no wonder. McDonald's French fries would dry any Asian American cowgirl's lips. She swallowed the fries like a penguin gulping small fish. She crumpled the box. What a waste. Tons of acres of trees chopped down to make paper boxes for Americans to gorge themselves on the king of fast foods. Petronella Esmeralda Kong adjusted her cowgirl's hat as she passed a mirror on the way outside McDonald's. This was some small town, and she didn't even know what incarnation she was. Fine Asian American cowgirl she was, riding the Greyhound from LA to Frisco, and she didn't even know where she was. And that was some fun she had in LA too. Yup, Speaking at an International Women's Day panel, Petronella Esmeralda Kong, Secretary Extraordinaire, speaking about women and work and socialism and fighting back. Wow. If her mother could see her now, Ma would never believe it. But heck, times have changed since her ma emigrated from a small village in Toisan in China in the 1930s. Heck, this was 1982. Well, Petronella Esmeralda Kong felt pretty darn satisfied. Nah, not the French fries, not her fine leather cowgirl boots stitched in gold and orange threads, shooting up like flames from a golden palomino underground. She felt as if she'd eaten her last meal, steamed rice, potatoes, with their jackets on, those juicy fat lapchang, Chinese pork sausages, seaweed soup with tiny pork balls shimmering liang fun grass jelly, thick with maple syrup and sparkling mineral water. Whoops, can't forget the steamed rice, white rice, long grain, Texas Patna. That's what she and other Chinese Americans loved and ate every day of her lives. Yep, satisfying. Talking her full head off, but making sense. Words that became poems, poems that became songs, writing and talking fast as bullets that shot from her silver pistols. She never owned real pistols. Heck no. She'd be too scared. She'd probably shoot herself in the foot. And then where would she be? Probably in Hollywood heaven and drinking sarsaparilla with Alan Ladd, that movie idol of her youth. Well, here she was, writing sentences, floating from one to another, beats, stringing her life together, apart, together, tighter than ever. All parts of her head, her heart, her hands, her legs, her experiences, and yes, her vision. People of all colors sitting together at the table, celebrating the many cultures that inherited this native land, this gold mountain of her ancestors, this land that she loved and now fought for with her every breath. Petronella Esmeralda Kong wanted to waltz in her cowgirl boots. She wanted to tango, cha-cha-cha, swing, but she didn't want to make a fool of herself in front of the folks from her bus. There was this Mexican couple that sat across her. The woman's lips shone with fresh lipstick, looked like plumberry wine. Her companion, an elderly man with a head of thick hair, reminded her of the grandfather she never met. Her own grandfather never knew what it was to ride a bus. Then they probably broke their backs working the farm in Toisan from sunup to sundown. She wondered if her grandfathers were handsome, if they teased her grandmothers, if they ever found time to joke with one another after a hard day's work. All kinds of families riding the Greyhound bus these days, especially her people. A young Asian man in a fine leather jacket who looked as if he stepped out of World War II, and a Cantonese-speaking couple with chrome yellow sacks advertising Italian market. Was everybody supporting the Patco strikers? Or was it just cheaper to ride Greyhound? Well, she was supporting the air traffic controllers for higher wages and safer working conditions on the job. And so were her comrades throughout the United States. Every comrade took the bus or the train to go where they had to go. Labor solidarity, that was important to her, and she was a part of it. Not small, but something big that made her feel her roots to her people in Toisan, and especially to her people in Oakland's Chinatown. Petronella Esmeralda Kong began to walk toward the bus. The Filipino man followed right behind her. Petronella Esmeralda Kong felt goosebumps. Darn, her red good luck kerchief was getting more stained. She didn't like to be followed, but then he was a paying passenger on the bus. Suddenly she heard him say, "I would like to see you again." Oh, was all she could muster. Fine, an Asian American cowgirl she was, hates the in-between stuff, and all she could say to a stranger's invitation was, "Oh, red hot or ice cold." That's what she liked, not that yucky, oh, that middle brown stuff that got her nowhere. On the bus, Petronella Esmeralda Kong returned to her seat, row 8, aisle. The man returned to his seat, row 4, aisle. Well, the dude's not that brave, she thought. Heck, what kind of encouragement was O? It was flat as a candy wrapper that landed in the gutter. Well, Petronella Esmeralda Kong wasn't quite used to being an Asian American cowgirl riding the Greyhound alone. Heck, she rarely did anything alone. She had always done things with her sisters, then with her mother, and when her father died, and then with her ex-husband. She had gone from roof to roof, never knowing what it was like to live alone, to travel alone, to live life as an adventure and a challenge. Now the Greyhound hummed and jerked. Shucks, there was a whole world out there, not the sagebrush and cattle and rattlesnakes of Hollywood westerns, but real sagebrush and sand and howling winds. At Manzanar and Heart Mountain, desert camps where the Japanese people got locked up during World War II because they looked like the enemy. And the Patco strikers, workers themselves, their families, sticking their necks out as airline, so airline passengers' lives and their own lives would not be endangered. By golly, there's something to that. People sticking together, and that was something to taking a stand, red hot or ice cold, not that gray stuff in between. It meant fighting to win. And even if Petronella Esmeralda Kong was a secretary and an Asian American cowgirl all at the same time, she liked being involved, and riding the Greyhound alone wasn't bad at all. Heck, she had time to sleep and write in her journal. Well, enough dreaming for now. Enough reminiscing about her childhood for now. She looked out the window and let her silver pen rest in her hand. She caressed the pen as if it were a newborn child. Outside, there was not one jackrabbit or rattlesnake, just a lot of suburban homes whizzing by bushes of oleanders. Petronella laughed softly, almost wickedly to herself. She hoped the Filipino man didn't think she was the unfriendly sort, but this Asian American cowgirl had work to do. The afternoon sun blazed. Petronella's eyes began to nod, and as she relaxed, she thought of the moon rising and wondered if indeed it was conceited. Perhaps her father only liked to tease her and her sisters just to keep them awake across the Bay Bridge on the way home. Petronella Esmeralda Kong let her eyes close, feeling mighty proud, riding the Greyhound to support the Patco strikers, riding the Greyhound to take a stand for the rest of the sunsets of her life. And our next reader Alice Rogoff.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to LaborFest. What I'm going to read is called My Alphabet Students, and then some of it's fictional and some of it's poetry. I've been to 3 colleges or universities. I've known students who have left college and ones who stayed. In 1968, student Z might have said, "Why stay? We want to make a revolution." Student Z could have left and gone to work in a women's shelter, perhaps in Oregon or Washington State. Student X, did he leave to organize a factory? In the 1960s, Kennedy and Johnson began affirmative action programs and policies. Affirmative action was affecting lives not only at schools, but also in employment and contracts. So student L went to college because of affirmative action, and L's sister got a job as an electrician in a training program for women. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission helped fight student M's case of discrimination when being denied a job for being a woman. This poem is called Interracial House, 1969. Black and white women study group, 2 Black women, Val and Drea, ministers' daughters, cut their hair short, a wall of African earrings displayed like family pictures. They look renewed. We listen to Aretha till 3 in the morning. We gossip about all the Black students in this white man's college, reading God's Trombones and Black Rage. 6 months later, Val has left college altogether, angry, working for affirmative action. But some students drop out of college not because of because of not enough financial aid, or leave to go to a state university that is closer to home and less travel expense. Student P is at City College, or what is left of it. She is fighting to keep more classes, or all of it. She wants to go to graduate school one day. In Europe or Cuba, that would be much easier. And this poem is on City College. City College, San Francisco. I finally took a women's studies class. I went to college in the late 60s when there was a women's consciousness raising group. Now young women major in women's studies. In my college and Ivy League schools, San Francisco State University started ethnic studies, and Tilly and Jack Olson started labor studies at City College. Students in my City College class 2002, young Chinese women and 1 Chinese man. 1 older woman who took care of her grandchild was going back to school. She wanted to be a stewardess when young. African Americans and Filipinos. We did projects on women's economic lives. 1 woman in her 20s asked to write about Janis Joplin. I did a report on Linda Chavez Thompson, AFL-CIO Vice President, and received credit for labor studies too. 2013, I go to teach-ins to Save City College, a net for low-income people where you can find women's history, a place for one who never took a women's studies class. And this is another piece about City College when we were gearing up more to try to save it. City College hearing. We are in line for a court hearing for City College accreditation. Outside the courthouse in the long line, join the teachers wearing AFT buttons. Community college teachers at this point are 40% women, while only 1/3 of 4-year college professors are women, and 80% elementary and high school teachers are women. Janet Tom and Leslie Simon and Judith Levy Sender are in line. Is it so wrong to care about teachers, full-time, part-time, to keep on teaching students who pay less than at Berkeley and San Francisco State? A board wants the school to disappear in the Mission, in Chinatown, in the Ingleside, on Ocean Avenue. Black students in hoodies, Latinos and Asian Americans, senior women and men with gray beards on the edge of where the fog rolls in. Instructors who care waiting in line for 50 places in a courtroom. Louise Nair and Margaret Benchuf-Holler teach English as a second language. Pat Wynn teaches music. Dr. Loco is in line also, and men with anima in their hearts, and feisty women with animus waiting by the court door for a judge with good sense. And the little college I went to will try to keep a diverse student body, but I have to go back to where I was reading, which is students S, T, and U stayed in a small college. One, S had their school paid by their parents. T worked every summer and had a job in the college cafeteria. U thought maybe they should join the military to pay for college. The ads looked so appealing. U decided to get a trade. Affirmative action is important. This is a poem about what inequities in pay women, for instance, have had in the past. Merging. In Valerian books, I find old union documents. Once there was a woman's local, the Women's Bookbinders and Bindery Union, finishing books, open a spine, open fading pages of a 1937 agreement. In 1917, the men and women's locals merging into one. In 1917, women didn't have the federal vote. In 1917, they said men would take care of the family. If one merges into one and becomes the same, one would think equal. But the cards in the women's game are eights, not aces. Half votes, less pay, women per week, $51, women per week, $25, man apprenticed, first month, $13, and then $22 and $30. A woman apprentice, the first month, $10, then $18 and $21. Long rows of books, the covers red, brown, yellow, but they're all done the same. And also, women aren't necessarily encouraged to be in certain occupations. So this poem is called Tradeswoman. 1970, women were said to have certain jobs and men were builders. But Andrea and I like working with my hands, like doing something different, took woodworking in high school, didn't mind climbing or height. But could she apply to be a plumber, an iron worker? All the apprentices were guys. They would make fun of her. In the 1980s, Andrea saw Elena with a jackhammer, hard hat, and overalls in downtown San Francisco. Then Belle in 1990, high up on the Bay Bridge, times changing. But in 2013, Andrea, an iron worker who signed up in the 80s, wants to know, are the younger women still applying? I don't see them. Maybe it's all computers now. Was it just a trend, a movement that ended? Andrea says, I still like working with my hands. And to conclude, on the paper I should be able to find, The little college I went to is trying to keep a diverse student body, even without what the Supreme Court just did, trying to and getting rid of affirmative action nationally. And what it could be still doing is just taking away all employment programs, even ones that are just trying to encourage a diverse student body and have equity programs and inclusion programs. And this is my last piece. It's green for miles, flat as a sheet of paper, going to a college reunion after 50 years, cornfields in an old prairie state. If I get there on time, there will be a farmer's market or a band in the town park. Students have higher grades than I did, but I can still take walks and remember the elms that died and the friends that died and all those calling for revolution rather than looking at graduate school catalogs. Gathering at the student union, but not for picnics. Fried chicken barbecues didn't mean a meal from a Black militant raising his fist high, but some students are still walking in the streets to protest, even in Iowa, at a small college in Iowa, especially in places like Iowa. There's somebody else. Oh, well, as our facilitator here, I know that Susan Ford is going to read next. I think Susan is muted.
Yeah, I'm here now. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. The topic that interests me is how teachers are able to bring teaching into the classroom. There's so many obstacles today. And so that's what I want to share. I want to talk with you about the gift of being a teacher, along with the responsibility one takes when stepping into the role, as the dream leads them to awaken and develop curiosity and explore and develop through further education, student teaching, and being mentored. Taking on the responsibility to help each child to really be who they are, awaken curiosity and discover the world through their senses and learn to question and learn to live with questions, no matter how long that might take. There have been times when society and the Department of Education school boards have honored teachers to bring their gift to students, giving supplies, books, papers, pencils to the teachers and the students in the classroom, while trusting the teacher to find their way to awaken new ways of being and growing and preparing the students to live life fully, build community, and care for others. But change is continuous, new discoveries of learning or returning to old ways of educating or cuts to the budget or schools closing or too many students in the classroom for a teacher to be able to do a good job. In 1978, Proposition 13 was voted in, cutting property taxes, which was the main part of funding schools. The budget was cut. California went from being in the top 3 of the nation to the bottom 3. We are still there. There are some visionaries who show up. In the mid-1960s, Governor Pat Brown appointed Clark Kerr of UC Berkeley to create a master plan for higher education, increasing community colleges, creating a model that enhanced education for many. It was affordable and offered a good education, sometimes a great education. It's a model that is still used today throughout our nation. In 2002, George W. Bush created the obstacle, a huge obstacle, which was called No Child Left Behind Act. The focus was on testing. Teachers were having to spend an enormous amount of time on preparing for tests, taking them away from the daily teaching of subjects. Instead of students learning to learn the subject and understand the subject and appreciate the subject, they were only learning how to take a test on the subject. Some excelled, others failed. Underachieving schools were punished. It was a failed experiment, not a true way to understand if children had gained knowledge of the material. There are so many ways to learn, and there are so many ways to understand if a student has understood and learned. I wanted to talk also about fundraising. Obviously, in most schools throughout the nation, public schools, schools are underfunded, and many people have to find other ways to help the schools. There's a lot of fundraising that happens. So my experience of what happens in San Francisco varies depending on the school, depending on who's attending the school, depending on the parents and their ability to organize. I know some people who were able to, over many years, while their children were going to an elementary school, they were able to raise enough money to do many things. But one of the things they also did was to hire an art teacher and pay the salary of this art teacher for the whole year. While other schools couldn't even think of doing something really simple. There's really a problem with the budget. There's a problem with how schools get money, and it really needs to be examined. But we're all part of a community. We're all part of a community that has a school or has schools. And many teachers get burnt out, and many teachers leave the profession, not because they're not good teachers or they're not able to teach or want to teach how they want to teach, but because there's so many obstacles in the way. And so people are getting burnt out and leaving. And I feel like we need to learn how we can support teachers by bringing our voice to the meetings where decisions get made. And also to, if we have time, to volunteer in the classroom or volunteer in any way. So it's in my heart to really want to help teachers to return back to being able to teach in the classroom, be honored for their teaching in the classroom, be appreciated for teaching in the classroom, as they know. We have moved so far away from that, and it's such a struggle. So I just want to end with asking people to think about what they could do within their community. And I'll end with a Mary Oliver poem. The title is Just as the Calendar Began to Say Summer. I went out of the schoolhouse fast and through the gardens and to the woods and spent all summer forgetting what I had been taught. 2 times 2 and diligence and so forth. How to be modest and useful and how to succeed and so forth. Machines and oil and plastic and money and so forth. By fall, I had healed somewhat, what was summoned, but I was summoned back to the chalky room and the desk to sit and remember the way the river kept rolling its pebbles, the way the wild wren sang though they hadn't a penny in the bank, the way the flowers were dressed in nothing but light. Thank you.
I'm gonna